The battle to learn the truth of what really happened by releasing the files is now in the news almost every day. While the political class takes sides in this battle, the victims of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell are often ignored, and the toll that this is taking on them emotionally is often just a footnote rather than a focus of many stories.
As the tea leaves seem to point to a possible deal between the government and Ghislaine Maxwell, victims of Jeffrey Epstein are speaking out and asking for more transparency. Now this, as top White House officials were reportedly set to meet with Vice President J.D. Vance about an Epstein strategy as they're considering releasing the transcripts of the recent DOJ interview with Maxwell. Some of those victimized by Epstein may be concerned about the handling of the records, while others are wondering what Maxwell had to say in that sit-down.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure if we can even believe her. But, I mean, I would like to know what the U.S. Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, asked her and what she actually said to him. It's very upsetting to me, and I cry with tears like I am now in my living room watching this all the time when I see it on the news every day. Jeffrey's in my brain, and I see him again and again, and I remember what he did to me in that hotel room. And I feel pain in my heart for myself and all for the other victims everywhere.
Oh my gosh, my heart goes out to her and all of the victims. And you know, in this program, we always like to remember the victims. How might they be feeling with all of this, with a lack of justice with Jeffrey Epstein? And now questions about whether Ghislaine Maxwell is going to get some kind of a deal. Well, let's bring in an advocate who is representing 11 Epstein accusers, attorney Eric Fudali. Eric, good morning to you. It's wonderful to see you, and you're fighting a tough fight for these people, as you know. Talk to us, please, about what it's like for them.
You know, it's frustrating. It's disheartening because this is not just what's happening right now. This has been a pattern that's been going on for decades. The victims continue to be disregarded. They continue to be disrespected. They continue to be forgotten. Beginning in the 90s, of course, with this FBI sham investigation that didn't lead anywhere. The 2008 nonsense sweetheart deal from Alex Acosta that allowed Jeffrey Epstein to continue to abuse. Then, of course, he's finally arrested. The victim thinks, okay, there's going to be justice, and he's somehow allowed to miraculously kill himself in federal custody. Then, of course, Ghislaine Maxwell. You have to remember, she's the one person who has actually met justice, been held accountable for the crimes. And now she's getting a cushy transfer to a club fed type prison, and now there's even talks of a pardon. I mean, it's just one thing after another for these victims, and all they want is closure and justice.
Yes, they more than deserve it. Eric, with Epstein's death, however that went down, you know, for people who believe it was a homicide, you know, and the people who believe it was suicide, however it went down, he's dead. Is there any money available, even at this point, for these victims to get something, to get some kind of financial compensation? I know it doesn't take away the pain, take away the trauma. I understand that. I wish there could be more punishment for him. But is there anything left to attack in terms of assets?
Well, so fortunately, when Jeffrey Epstein passed away, there was a fund that was created to go to the, quote unquote, it's supposed to all go to the victims. I have some issues with how that was laid out, and of course, where all the money went. I think every single penny Jeffrey Epstein has ever earned should go to the victims. So the victims have been able to get some sort of compensation. Certainly not nearly enough to ever account for what they went through, the years and years of abuse, and the years and years of fear from Jeffrey Epstein. That's something I think also gets lost in this, is this just wasn't, sexual abuse of these vulnerable young women. This was also, he would instill fear and intimidation, brag about his powerful friends, about his power, he could, what he could do to them. And that also, I think, is forgotten. These women not only were abused, but they've lived in fear of Mr. Epstein and his associates, even beyond the grave.
Yeah, that's a great point, Eric, living in fear. Yeah, I'm sure it's just very haunting for all of the victims that you've been helping through this process. I'm happy to hear they've gotten something. They deserve far more because, you know, money doesn't take away trauma. You know, it might help with things in life, and we're grateful for that, but it doesn't remove the trauma, as you know. You've been a prosecutor before going to the private sector and doing all the work you do. Tell me, when it comes to these transcripts of the interview that Todd Blanche did with Maxwell recently in the prison, how do your clients feel about that? Do they want the transcripts to be public?
What we don't want, what I certainly don't want, and also what my clients and those victims I spoke to don't want, is they don't want to give Ghislaine Maxwell a platform. She doesn't deserve a platform to talk about what she wants to do, which is why there's no interest really in having her testify in front of Congress. Now, I'd like to see the transcript to see if the DOJ actually challenged her, if it was more like a cross-examination, or if it was more just giving her a voice, trying to clear certain names, letting her tell a story, and, you know, focusing on the people that they want to exonerate, right? If there's an actual real cross-examination type interview where they're challenging her and getting to the bottom of, you know, what she knows and what happened, I'd certainly be somewhat interested in releasing that. Again, I'm all for the most exposure as possible, as long as it's not at the expense of the victims or giving Ms. Maxwell any sort of, you know, special treatment. But I would like to see, you know, what actually happened, what she actually spoke about, without giving Ms. Maxwell a platform to talk about, because she's never taken accountability for what she did. Also, you have to remember, she's been accused of perjury. So, you know, you have to take everything she's saying with a grain of salt. I'm for the most exposure as possible, but I really don't want Ms. Maxwell to have sort of a platform, or the DOJ really to have a platform to try to, you know, tell their side of the story, or focus the conversation on what they want to be revealed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know what you're saying, Eric. Yeah, you know, fair enough, right? I mean, because if she was queen for a day, we know in that interview, and we don't know how tough it was. Last question before we have to let you go for now. I hope we can continue the conversation, Eric, but there's some talk, just talk at this point, about Deputy AG Todd Blanche, the one who did the interview, possibly going on Joe Rogan's podcast to talk about it. How do your clients feel about that?
It's just more of this political circus that's been surrounding. You know, I keep saying that the victims are being forgotten. I would even go as far as say the victims are being exploited and re-victimized by this political theater, this political circus that's been happening. And I really just wish they could finally get some true justice and some true closure.
I know you do. Eric Vidali, you're awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today. We'll hope to have you back very soon, and please keep us posted with any developments you may hear before we do. Take care.